Welcome to the 22nd Memorial of 9/11. I'll start off with the national anthem, Natasha Jimenez.
Detail, David Hutt.
Oh, say, can you see further dawn's early light? Once so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the guns bursting in air, gave proof through that night that our flag was still there. Oh, save us, that star-spangled banner yet waves o'er the land of the free, in the hope of the brave.
What up?
And now, for the first time, I'd like to unveil the new and re-improved mural. Okay. I'd like to introduce Father Gregory for the opening prayer.
Good morning, everyone. Let us pray. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Lord God, Father of us all, in your goodness you have guided the growth of our nation. You have secured our freedoms and helped us to prosper. Yet we know that we are vulnerable, that we must be vigilant, that we must not tire of working for justice and peace for all. We ask you, Lord, to keep us in your peace and help us to support one another. As we remember today the terrorist attacks on our soil 22 years ago, we ask that you help us to cherish the memory of those who died. Help us to support those who still suffer, and to honor those whose heroic efforts and determination delivered many from danger. Bless and protect our first responders, our soldiers, our healthcare workers, our elected officials. Continue to heal our nation, local communities, and families. Strengthen us in righteousness and in hope, and direct our words and actions today in accordance with your goodwill. All this we ask through Christ our Lord.
Ready.
Detail, moral, colors.
Thank you, Father. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Lawrence Fire Department welcomes Chief Moriarty, Mayor DePena, friends, family, members of the community. Today, we pay tribute on this 22nd anniversary of 9/11. No one will ever forget where they were or what they were doing on that tragic day. Millions of people slept, prepared for a normal September day, but there would be nothing normal about it. At 8:06 on September 11th, Flight 11 flew into the North Tower. At 9:03 a.m., Flight 175 flew into the South Tower. At 9:37, Flight 77 hit the Pentagon. And at 10:03 a.m., Flight 93 crashed to the ground near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Brave men and women rushed towards the towers to help. 343 firefighters, 60 police officers, 8 paramedics made the sacrifice that day. A total of 79 men, women, and children lost their lives that day. May we all strive to never forget. Pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. The ringing of the bell. The ceremonial ringing of the bell in memory of those who died in the line of duty is an age-old tradition of the fire service that dates back over 150 years. The tradition reflects respect and honor to those who have gave their lives to their duty. A distinctive bell ringing marks the end of an emergency and return to quarters. In memory to all who died during the attacks on September 11th, 2001, the bell is rung 5 times in a series of 5. Multiplied out, this equals 3,125, a number very close to the actual number of people who died as a result of the attack on America. We will never forget. Bell ringer. At this time, I'd like to bring up Dan Royce, President of Local 146, Lawrence Fire Department.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming out this morning and being here to remember those lost on that tragic morning back in September of 2001. We're also here to dedicate our 9/11 mural so we can continue to honor their memories as the years have turned into decades since that infamous morning. I would love to thank Elevated Thoughts artist Alex Bryan for his hard work in restoring our mural and make it shine again and continuing to make the mural a beacon of light here in our community. I would also like to thank retired Lawrence Fire Lieutenant Jimmy Flynn for his dedication in helping our mural to get restored and seeking the donations to help cover the cost of the restoration. And for all the people and companies that have donated to help the cost of the restoration, I truly thank you. The majority of us know where we were that morning. For me, I was a sophomore at the Greater Lawrence Technical High School in Andover. I was in my electrical shop class when I overheard my teacher discussing the events that were taking place in New York and Washington. In total disbelief, our class worked together to get a TV set up so we can see for ourselves the truth and the horror that was unfolding in our country. We were successful, and we all sat together watching in disbelief the events that took the lives of thousands of Americans. This mural serves this community as a place to come to remember all those lives lost on September 11th. That day, 343 New York City firefighters lost their lives, and thousands died since then due to 9/11-related illnesses. The work they and other first responders did on that day and the months after the attacks became an inspiration of hope in an uncertain world. Those firefighters never wavered in their commitment to serve their community and to risk all types of dangers to help save their fellow persons. This mural serves as a reminder of that dedication They had to help rescue, recover, and restore New York and America after the deadliest day in American history. I am grateful for the restoration of our mural so we can never forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I'd like to welcome Chief Moriarty.
Good morning. Thank you for coming. I remember that day well. I worked here in the city of Lawrence as a paramedic. I remember standing in the emergency room looking at the television as the towers went down. And the first thing that came to my thought was how many firefighters have we just lost? Yes, we lost many civilians, but my heart was with the fire department at the time. I'd like to read a passage that was part of a speech given by a priest during the rededication of a fire station in New York on 9/10/01. This is just a segment of it, but I think it fits how the fire service works out every day. That's the way it is. Good days, bad days, up days, down days, sad days, happy days, but never a boring day on this job. You do what God has called you to do. You show up, you put one foot in front of the other, you get on the rig and you go out and you do the job, which is a mystery, a surprise. You have no idea when you get on the rig, no matter how big the call, no matter how small. You have no idea what God is calling you to do. But He needs you. He needs me. He needs all of us. That was by Father Judge, the head chaplain of the New York City Fire Department, who the next day was the first fatality of the New York City Fire Department. He responded to the call and he died. I would also like to read a poem. It reminds me of September the 11th. It was written by Roger J. Robichaud of the Holbrook, Mass. Fire Department. We mourn their loss this day, this year. Those now with God, no danger near. So many loved ones do stand confronting loss throughout our land. My heart goes out to those who do. No one can fathom what they view. I firmly pray for peace of mind. Dear God, please help each one to find. And to our soldiers now at war, God guide above at sea and shore. They are the best, I have no doubt. Our country's pride, complete, devout. The finest force you'll ever see, all freedom grown through liberty. One final thought comes clear to me, for what must live in infamy, absolutely will remember the 11th of September. Thank you once again for coming out to respect those that have gone before us. Let's hope we never, ever have anything so severe.
Thank you, Chief. I'd like to welcome now Mayor of Lawrence, Brian DePena.
Thank you everyone for being here today. That's a great opportunity for say thank you for any person sacrifice life, family, for keep the nation freedom. Keep nation freedom is not easy, never. The history count many names sacrifice her life for keep American freedom. And many people keep ready for continue move the nation freedom. I want to say thank you, firefighter, police department. I want to say thank you for many families in America sacrifice his family, friends, neighbor for keep the nation free. Keep the nation freedom is not easy because when the nation son, daughter, to keep the nation freedom outside the United States is not easy decision, but for many years, for any time, many people put it in the line, in the front line for keep the nation freedom. I want to say thank you for being here, and I want to say God bless America, and God bless the city of Lawrence. Thank you so much for being here again, and God bless.
Thank you, ma'am. I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for the day, retired Chief Richard Schaefer.
Rededication, Chief Moriarty, other elected officials in the city of Lawrence, firefighters, police officers, and friends of the fire department. First thing I'd like to say, and it's already been said today, I was thinking I might be the first, but it's never forget. This is one thing that we were very worried about when this happened. And this mural will stand as a reminder to people. Thousands of cars go by here every day, and they'll be reminded of what happened on 9/11. 343 firefighters were killed, and as was alluded to earlier, in the 22 years since that event, 341 firefighters have worked on that pile, they call it the pile, trying to find bodies, have died. 341 of them have died. And when the people started working on the pile, they thought they were going to maybe find some survivors. They quickly realized that there weren't going to be any survivor when a building of that size collapses. First thing I'd like to talk about is the firefighters from Lawrence that went down to ground zero. They were led, of course, by Lieutenant Flynn. He was the first one that came into my office almost right away. And he didn't ask me, he told me, I'm going to New York. I said, well, I can't send you, I can't pay you, you're going to have to get your own time off. I feel proud if you wear the Lawrence Fire Department turnout gear, and you have my blessing. He was followed by several others, and I don't want to mention their names because I'm afraid I might forget somebody. It's been 22 years. But I'd like to say that what these people did going down to New York was very exemplary, and it showed a great sacrifice. They didn't get paid, they didn't get per diem, they were put up in a firehouse, and they worked real hard on that pile, trying to find bodies. So they deserve a gratitude for bringing great praise to the Lawrence Fire Department. And there were actually people that didn't want them to go. I won't name any names, but there were some organizations in this state that wanted us to wait till we were called. Well, guess what? New York City had lost their whole command staff on the fire department that day. They had set up a command post in the first tower that collapsed. They had set up the command post in the lobby of that tower because that was their standard operating procedure. They run the fire. They lost the deputy commissioner, the chief of department, the chief special operations, and many other high-ranking officials that day. So they weren't really prepared because, you know, New York never needs mutual aid. I think this was the first thing that they ever had where they couldn't handle it by themselves. So they needed a lot of help, and they very much appreciated the guys from Lawrence that went down there. Now, next I'd like to tell you about my a trip I took to Rescue 2 in Brooklyn. In March of 2001, I went to a friend of mine, Jim Regan, and I went to on a trip to Rescue 2. Jim was grew up in Lawrence and went to Central Catholic High School And then he went out to Chicago and became a fire protection engineer for his college. And he was very well known in the fire service. He is an accomplished fire photographer. He's also been published in a lot of written stories in a lot of firefighting magazines. So he had connections in New York, and what we do for a trip to New York for the Rescue 2 was, first thing before we left, we'd go to Butcher Boy Market and get enough steaks for everybody for dinner. And when we showed them those steaks at Rescue 2, we got to be pretty popular guys. Then we go out on the rig, and they do the shopping in the supermarket and right there in Brooklyn. And that would be the evening meal. That afternoon while we were there, the lieutenant working that day, it was Lieutenant Pete Martin, he took the crew for a drill. And he brought us along with it. And it was a drill on about a 6-story building. It was a turn-of-the-century building, and on the roof, they had turned it into what you would call an Intel hotel. There was all kinds of antennas, wires, really complicated. And he wanted his men to see what roof operations would be like on that building. And in the middle of the building, there was a big shaft, and that was to let sunlight in for those people that lived in the interior. And there was no elevator either in that place. So anyway, 911, all 6 of those guys working were murdered at Ground Zero. This is a bracelet I have with their names on it. Like I said, never forget. Somebody else I'd like to tell you about is Ray Downey. He was the chief of special operations that day, and he also got killed. But I first met Ray Downey. He was a captain at Rescue 2, and he was a legendary fire officer at that time already. He was in charge of the rescue recovery efforts at Oklahoma City in 1995 when the federal building was blown up there in Oklahoma City. And he was a really well-known teacher, and he was also involved in testing out turnout gear. So he was one of the people that are responsible for that great turnout gear we have today that fully encapsulate a place a firefighter and makes things a little safer, not 100%. But, Ray Downey was just quite a guy, a wonderful guy, and I also have a bracelet with his name on it. Now I'd like to talk about the funerals. The funerals went on for months. I hate to say it, but as they found body parts and they used DNA, they would identify people. They wouldn't have a funeral for them until they actually found something. So a lot of people from Greater Lawrence, a lot of firefighters from Greater Lawrence area would go down to the funerals. And this was important because they couldn't staff all the funerals in New York. There were so many of them. So they wanted to make a good show, and so a lot of firefighters came down, and it gave the families a good feeling that there were so many people at the funeral. I only went to one funeral myself. It was for Billy Lake, who was the driver of Rescue 2 that day. And Billy was a motorcycle enthusiast. And I never saw so many bikers in my life as there were at his funeral. It was quite a sight. Also on that visit, the guy said to me, we ought to go down, you got to go down and see Ground Zero. And I said, no, I don't think they let us in. They said, yeah, they'll let you in. As soon as they know you're a fire chief, they'll let you in. So we went down, and they let me drive right through Ground Zero. This was later on in September. And it was a sight to behold. It was something out of a Mad Max movie. And when I got to the end, they came out and they washed my car off because it was so contaminated. They wanted to decontaminate it. And another story that I was told about the guys going to the funeral was it was a great spot to stop on your way to New York called Ryan's Deli in Vernon, New York. And Vernon, Connecticut. And so a bunch of firefighters went in there with their dress uniforms on, and they had breakfast, and then they wouldn't take their money. And then they got up to walk out, and everybody in a restaurant, and really big, it's a big restaurant, stood up and applauded them. So that was kind of heart-wrenching that they appreciated the fire service so much. The last person I'd like to tell you about is John Vigiano. John was a retired captain in New York City. He was well known as a fire instructor. And John had two sons. One was a lieutenant on the fire department, and the other was a detective on the ESU unit in the New York Police Department. And the ESU is a emergency service unit, and we like to say they were police officers that really wanted to be firemen. They have a rescue truck, just like a heavy rescue in the fire department, and then they have some smaller pickup trucks that they use for patrol. And they have all the equipment, maybe not quite all the equipment that a fire department rescue have, but they have a lot, and they were experts at repelling and so forth. And they also have a cabinet in that truck, and it's full of all the weapons that you would need to handle a riot or, lead the other police into a situation or something. And that day, both his sons were working, and he lost both sons, his only children, that day. At the 10-year ceremony after 10 years, Jim Regan and I went down again, and John Vigiano and his wife, every 9/11, would go, he's passed away since, but would go to a cemetery, so out in Queens, quite a ways out in Queens. So we went out there and visited John and his wife. They would go out there and they would sit by the graves of their sons. And it wasn't a sad thing, but people would come and visit them, firefighters and friends and stuff, and they would spend the day that way. And I was very touched by that event. Also, at the 10-year anniversary, Osama bin Laden had just been killed in April. And at the dedications and the church services, the Navy sent a group of Navy SEALs. And why would they do that? And this is my own mind, nobody told me this. I think they were the team that killed Osama bin Laden. And the Navy wanted him to go there and see how much the people of New York would really appreciate what they did. And I got a kick out of seeing the Navy SEALs. They loved riding on the fire trucks. They got a big kick out of that. Lastly, I'd like to talk about W6 up here on the mural. That was 1995. There were 6 firefighters killed in Worcester, cold storage warehouse fire. This was a dangerous building, and the deputy chief running the fire had to actually stand in the stairway and to keep the other firefighters from going in there so that more lives wouldn't be lost. And the fire marshal put up together a committee, and he put me on that committee to come up with something we could do to help. And if you ever see these square placards on a building with an X through them, that's where they came up with it on that committee. So that any really dangerous buildings, we placard them with that big X. It's not to mean that we won't put the fire out, but it's to mean, hey, be cautious. There's problems in this building. I'm going to leave you with one last thing. Never forget.
Thank you, Chief. Next, I'd like to bring up someone that was instrumental in the restoration of the mural, Lieutenant James Flynn.
Thanks, LT. I'd like to start off first by mentioning Ron Gagnon. The mural is beautiful, right? Come on. Without Ron, that wouldn't have happened, and I've told you the story in previous ceremonies, so I'm not going to say it again, but I just wanted to know it was Ron. My name is Jimmy Flynn. I'm a retired Lawrence fighter for 35. I was on for 35 years. I retired out of Engine 6. Nothing in life can be accomplished without people who share the same vision. So my main speech today will be about saying thank you to my team. First, I want to thank Jill Hemeninsky from the Tribune. She has been unbelievable from start to finish every year with the 9/11 ceremony in the mural. 14 months ago, we were on the phone, it was in July, trying to find someone to restore it. We were trying to get it done for last year, and it just wasn't going to happen. So I have so much gratitude to Jill. She's first and foremost the person I wanted to acknowledge first. And of course, Tim, her photographer, who goes around and takes great photos. And Terry Kelly, who gave me the name for Alex, who I'll talk about in a minute. I also like to thank Eric Zahn and Dan Fleming from the police department. Eric's a captain on the fire department. They got me started with the donations because fundraising is not fun. Fundraising is very difficult. And the 9/11 had a race in previous years and they had some funds left over. So Zippy, as we call him, Eric, said, hey, listen, we got some money in the bank you can have. And that got me on a good start to get the rest. And then, of course, Alex, who I'll introduce in a minute, he came around. He's going to be he was the artist. I'll talk a little more about him in a second. Dan Sandoval, who owns the building now, Buddy Landers used to own it. Dan is the new owner. He said, whatever you need, Jimmy. He painted the wall black for us. The electricians from the city of Lawrence, Jeff Domenico and his crew, they put new lighting up for us. All the local 146 members who donated, Dan Royce, the president, and of course the treasurer, who I bothered every couple of weeks, Mike Mercado. Mike was awesome, keeping me updated as the money came in. Nancy and Peter Geruso, that's my sister and her husband, made that beautiful little plaque that's hanging up there. I mean, that's a work of art right there. Picarello Florist did the flowers. I gotta mention another guy, Peter Reno. I got hooked up with him through Jill. Never met the man, but I did meet him last Friday at a 9/11 breakfast up in Salem, New Hampshire. And the bank, Enterprise Bank, gave me a nice donation. He said, Jimmy, can you come up and talk about the mural? Do me a favor. I said, sure. You know, you gave me some money, I'll do whatever you need. So Peter, thank you so much. And then ESCO Awards and Trophy Shop. And I'm just going to finish with this before I introduce Alex. I just want to acknowledge everybody that donated to this fund. And I want to start, there's no rhyme or reason to the names of how much they gave. It didn't matter. I'm just going to, some of them I don't even know their last names, but I'm going to say them anyway. Jonathan and David from, I go to Two Guys Smoke Shopping. I smoke cigars. And they said, hey, we want to give you some money. So I said, hey, great, thank you. Local 146, all my brothers came through big time. Mark Kucha Paving, big fan of the fire department. Enterprise Bank, Superior Cleaners, T.A. Sullivan Insurance, that's Mike Sullivan's outfit. Of course, my sister Nancy and Pete Geruso, Chief Schaefer, Jimmy Crane from North Andover, he's a retired fireman, Jackson Lumber, NESC Credit Union, Hayes' Tavern, the oldest bar in Lawrence, Tripoli Pizza, Rita Burke, Chief Marsh, Family Pool, N-Tech, and that has something to do with the Elks, and Ray McLean, Mary Jo and Chet Taylor, Kenny Poposky, Eugene M. Vieira, Catherine O'Sullivan, Charlie Day here. He was supposed to be here, and he's going to bring some chips. If he's here, maybe you get some chips. My sister Patricia Flynn, Kathleen O'Sullivan, the Rotary Club from Salem, New Hampshire, and I just got a last donation out on the street from Hobby Curran. Hobby, you're the best. And that's pretty much it for me. Now I want to talk about, thank you. Now I'm going to introduce the man of the hour. I met Alex through Jill in the paper 14 months ago, talking on the phone. He said, Jimmy, I'd love to do it, but I'm down in Rhode Island or Connecticut. I'm painting a basketball court for one of the Celtics. So I said, well, let's see what we can do. But it wasn't going to happen last year. And soon after that, he came back, and we came over here, and we looked at it, and he said, yeah, I'll do it. And as you can see, he put his heart and soul into it. I mean, it's Smokey's original design. Oh. This is a box coming in. Anyway, yeah, he came down and looked at it. We shipped it up to the Everett Mills. It was up there till yesterday, and we took it down, and now it's right here. So, without further ado, as they say, I'd like to introduce the artist, Alex Bryan. Elevated Thoughts.
Hey, thanks everybody for coming out. I won't take up too much time. I just kind of want to say one last thing. Joe got all my good stuff in the article in the paper, but I think one thing I really would love for us to all take away from this is to remind us of our traditions, the tradition of this day, the tradition of this, but let it remind you of your traditions. Traditions when you and your neighbors, your family, and your friends got through something terrible together. Let it remind you that we all go through trials and tribulations, and that everyone's worst day is their worst day. Meet them there at that day, and don't judge them. This was the worst day for a lot of people, and it still is. So I thank you for letting me meet you here. I thank you for all the sacrifices everyone's made, and I thank you for letting me be a part of this. Jimmy and I had a phrase that kind of naturally, organically developed as we would talk over the phone and meet. And I'll leave you here with that today. And I think as a country, we need to leave each other with it more every day. And that's more love. Thank you.
Nice job, Alex. Hey, I have some 8x10s of the restoration. They're frameable, I guess. If anyone would like some of the pictures, they're not all the same, but I didn't want to toss them, so just come and see me and I'll give them to you.
Let's give them all a round of applause.
At this time, I'd like to bring up Council President Mark LaPlante.
Thank you very much. Very briefly, I represent the men and women of the Lawrence City Council. Many of them are here today, some of them are not here, but those who are here today, I just want to acknowledge their presence. I have the Council Vice President Estella Reyes, Councilor Giovanni Rodriguez, Councilor Stephanie Infante, Councilor Selena Reyes, and Councilor Rich Russell. Am I missing anybody on councilors? Councilor Del Rosario as well. Listen, this was a very impactful event for all of us. We represent the city, the people that we represent were impacted, and we are so proud of our Lawrence Fire Department and first responders. I do believe there, and Jim Flynn, you could probably respond there to this. I think there may have been some police and EMTs that went down as well. But it was together that we made this thing happen. And we as elected officials are so proud that our firefighters, our first responders, took that stand on that fateful day to represent our city in a big picture. This wasn't about Massachusetts, this wasn't about New York, this wasn't even about the United States, this was bigger than that. And we say we never forget. As I was thinking about a couple of thoughts coming here today, twice that I can remember, not during my lifetime, we said never forget. One of them was the Alamo, never forget. The other one was Pearl Harbor, and there may be some people here who were alive during that time, never forget. For my generation, and for most of the people that are here today, this, as was so eloquently stated earlier, we should never forget. My memory of this very briefly is this. We all have our memories, as was mentioned. I was finishing up my second term as a city councilor in Tower Hill in District D. I had my first boy, Evan. He was 9 months old. It was September, obviously. And he was sitting on my lap, and we were watching the newscast. And I said to my young child, who is now 22, I said, Evan, this is changing all of our lives. The world that I know is now going to be completely different. You will not know any difference, but our world has changed dramatically because of this event. But I'm so proud of the men and women of our fire department and our city. And on behalf of all of us, I also want to recognize, I see that we have some of our state officials here. I'm not sure if they're going to speak. I see Senator Payano, a former city councilor and a partner in government, and Leader Frank Moran is here as well. And I'm not sure there's any other elected officials here, but and I see Francisco Paulino, Representative Paulino as well. So on behalf of all of us, thank you so much, and thank you for allowing us to say a few words here. Thank you.
This day has never been easy for a lot of us, but thanks to the efforts of all involved, the mural has stood the test of time, looking as good as the day it went up. September 11th, 2001, may we never forget. I'd like to put out some thank yous. I'd like to thank the men and women of the Local 146 and retirees, the LPD and LFD Honor Guard, LGH paramedics and EMTs, Father Gregory, Natasha Jimenez for the National Anthem, Jason Ruiz for our sound equipment, Relief Sin for the podium, chairs, tables, Alex Bryan for restoring the mural, building owner Dan Sandoval, Heavenly Donuts for the coffee and donuts. Chief, thank you. And thank you all for coming out to support us this day. This concludes our ceremony. Join us for light refreshments.